Number 10. Stalked and Killed. A dancer in Texas discovered a tracking device on her car, likely placed there by the very stalker that followed her down a highway and shot her to death in her very own vehicle. The young woman, a mother, who worked as an exotic dancer at Rick's Cabaret, had been stalked and harassed by one of her clients. In late 2021, police in Fort Worth responded to an accident on Highway 183. That was when they found the young woman dead in her car. Witnesses saw a silver Hyundai sedan speed off from the murder, leaving via an exit ramp before it crashed into a sign. Police identified the victim as Abigail Saldana, just 22 years old. The man who killed her is Stanley Seliga. She had complained about him previously, but nothing was done. Stanley had become so obsessed with the young woman that he started following her around. He harassed her, and he even put a tracker on her vehicle so that he always knew where she was. Creepy. Fellow employees knew that Abigail was frightened, but the police couldn't arrest Stanley because he hadn't physically done anything to her. Well, he finally snapped. As she drove along the highway, he came up beside her and unloaded his gun through her window, putting holes through her abdomen. The police eventually caught up to Stanley at his apartment, where they swiftly placed him under arrest for murder. Number 9. Fatal shooting of a Texas officer. In Texas, strippers aren't the only people who find themselves on the wrong end of an ambush. A Texas deputy was recently caught in a fatal shooting during a traffic stop. Corporal Charles Galloway of the Harris County Precinct was ambushed by a man named Oscar Rosales. Oscar pulled out a gun and blasted the cop before he even had a chance to react. According to Houston Police Chief Troy Finner, they have video evidence of Oscar shooting the deputy. However, Texas is a big place. The killer has gotten away and is in hiding. The police have put up a $60,000 reward for any information that leads directly to his arrest. They won't stop until they have Oscar behind bars. Sadly, we don't know the exact motive. Charles Galloway was sitting in his patrol car when the motorist stepped out of the vehicle and opened fire with absolutely no warning. This was in a residential neighborhood, a place where you would never expect this kind of violence. Oscar had an assault rifle with him and unloaded the whole clip at the cop before driving away. So far, the only arrests that have been made are members of Oscar's family who were involved in helping him to escape, but they have refused to give up his whereabouts. Number 8. Strangled at home. Instagram model Mercedes Moore was strangled in her own home by a deranged stalker. The Instagram model, extremely successful with over 2 million followers, was found dead on the floor of her Texas home. The Fort Bend County Medical Examiner ruled the cause of death as strangulation. Mercedes, her real name Janae Gagne, suffered a traumatic concussion. The man who killed her, a 34-year-old maniac named Kevin Accorto, was also found dead in the house. He had multiple sharp force trauma wounds that he very likely inflicted upon himself after taking the young woman's life. But why did it have to end like this? Police have yet to disclose a motive, yet they have said that there was no indication the killer forced his way into the model's home. Nobody knows if she invited him in, if he snuck in like a sneaky burglar in the night, or if he somehow tricked her into opening the door. Whatever the case, he'd been stalking her for an undetermined amount of time, but it was long enough that Mercedes had complained about him to friends. She was worried about the psycho, but probably never imagined that he would actually find her house. She definitely wasn't prepared for him to get inside and murder her in an explosive fit of violent insanity. One of the most heartbreaking parts of the story is that Mercedes was found by her own father. He had called the police and asked them to perform a wellness check when his daughter stopped returning his calls. He was there with the cops when they opened the front door and found her cold and stiff on the floor. Number 7. The Bad Boyfriend. A Texas man named Quanmaine Travion Boyd was on the loose after he abducted and killed his pregnant girlfriend. Houston authorities were working to locate the shooter, accused of capital murder in the death of Kavana Smith. Kavana was first abducted by her psychotic boyfriend on October 6th. A few days earlier, she had told her boyfriend she was pregnant. When the police searched Quanmaine's home, they found a greeting card written by the victim, explaining how the baby wasn't what they expected, but that he should get ready to be a father. The greeting card also contained an ultrasound image of the baby from the day before. This man clearly was not ready to be a father. He lost his mind, kidnapped his girlfriend, and stuck her in the back of his truck. She managed to text her sister while being held captive just shy of 7 o'clock in the morning. Her sister had tried to phone her back, but it went straight to voicemail. That text was the last message Gavanna ever sent. Just after 7 o'clock in the morning, Quan Main took out his gun and shot Gavanna directly in the face. She was dead immediately, and Quan Main fled in a white truck. She was found dead in the street less than 3 miles from her house. Last we heard, the murderer's boyfriend is still at large. Number 6. Shot for getting lost. Terry Turner killed a man for just being in his driveway. The Texas native has become the source of serious controversy in the state, bringing into the light some rather bizarre Texas laws that some say should be thrown out. It all started when Adil Dagoe got lost and pulled into Terry's driveway. Adil just so happened to be a Muslim immigrant who arrived in the US from Morocco back in 2013. He had borrowed his girlfriend's car after a barbecue outside San Antonio. On the way back home, it seemed he lost his way. He stopped and pulled over. That was when Terry saw a man he didn't recognize and that he didn't like the look of, sitting in his driveway with his headlights on. What happened next is hard to find an excuse for. Terry Turner grabbed his gun and went outside. As he approached the car, it was already reversing out of the driveway. That didn't stop Terry from unloading his gun through Adil's windshield. A bullet went straight through his head, and Adil was dead before he even realized what was happening. Terry then called 911 and told them, "I just killed a guy." Terry has been charged with murder, but his lawyers are trying to get him off. The lawyers are defending their client using the Stand Your Ground law. This is a Texas law that allows any homeowner to use deadly force against somebody on their property if the action is seen as necessary. The whole point of the law is that a homeowner is allowed to stand their ground and defend themselves instead of retreating when under threat. The issue here is that Terry clearly wasn't under threat. What do you think the outcome of this case should be? Is Terry guilty of murder, or did he just do what he thought was necessary to defend his home from a guy backing out of his driveway? Let us know your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to subscribe before the end of the video. Number 5. Coaxing the boyfriend. Texas woman Jennifer Lynn Faith has been charged in a bizarre murder plot. She orchestrated the brutal killing of her husband, but it was actually her secret boyfriend who carried it out. The 49-year-old woman was married to American Airlines technology director named Jamie. She was also dating a man named Darren Ruben Lopez. On October 9, 2020, her boyfriend went to her house and opened fire on her husband while he stood on his lawn. It's not the killing itself, or even the weird love triangle that's so strange. It's the way in which Jennifer convinced her boyfriend to do the killing. She came up with 2 fake email accounts and corresponded with her boyfriend under the guise of her husband, as well as one of her friends. She was eventually successful in convincing her boyfriend that she was being physically and sexually abused. This pushed Darren into a dark corner. He thought he was doing the right thing in liberating Jennifer from her tormentor, but in reality, it was all a depraved and calculated scam. Jennifer was sending Darren fake pictures of fake injuries. She pretended to brag about beatings as her husband, and she posed as a concerned friend who insisted the only way to get her out was through murder. Darren is now facing 10 years in prison, while Jennifer is looking at life. Number 4. Father and son murderers. Police have identified a Texas teen, a boy just 14 years old, as being responsible for a triple murder at a convenience store. And while this type of thing may happen a lot in Texas, this story has a bizarre parental twist. The kid opened fire in the convenience store on Sunday, gunning down 3 people and injuring 1 more. But he had an accomplice. Garland police say it was his father who drove the getaway vehicle and who instigated the entire thing. The shooter is Abel Elias Acosta. His father is Richard Acosta Jr. The dad was arrested by police after they saw surveillance footage of him driving the white truck that his son used to get away after the murder spree. He's now facing a capital murder charge, while his son faces 3. But the cops have not yet been able to track down the teen, who's considered armed and extremely dangerous. But you've really got to wonder why a dad would drive their son to a convenience store to execute a bunch of people. The cops can't say for sure, but it may have been gang-related. Sadly, one of the victims was a completely innocent bystander who went to pick up tacos for family dinner. Those taco shells ended up stained with blood. Number 3. The Old Lady Stalker. A man in Texas killed 12 elderly women, but he may have killed dozens more. His name is Billy Chemirmir, 46, when he was indicted on 6 capital murder charges by a Dallas County grand jury. This was for the deaths of 6 women from between 2016 and 2018. But then a second grand jury in Collin County indicted the man on 5 additional murder charges. In total, police are very certain he killed a dozen elderly women. He stalked them, robbed them, and then disposed of them, usually by suffocation. But here's what's truly sickening. According to the Dallas police, investigators are now looking at the cases of over 750 elderly people who died in the state, checking to see if any of them are linked to our killer. The thing is that he often posed as a maintenance worker to gain access to facilities that house the elderly. Once inside, he stalked the halls looking for the perfect victim. He would find an old lady with lots of jewelry, then rob them and suffocate them for fun. Police know of 12 victims, but there could be potentially dozens, even hundreds. Billy may have been breaking into senior care facilities all over Texas and killing for years. Number 2. Trouble at Chuck E. Cheese. In Texas, not even Chuck E. Cheese is a safe place. A man is in police custody after he allegedly shot and killed a father outside the popular kids' entertainment complex. According to the victim's widow, she's glad the murderer is now behind bars. It unfolded like a nightmare. Calogero Duenes was outside the Chuck E. Cheese in Humble, Texas. He was about to celebrate his daughter's birthday with his wife and some friends. It was New Year's Eve, and everybody was having a great time. At least they were, until a man named Antoine Daniel Badon drove the wrong way in the parking lot and almost ran Calogero over. The two got into a verbal argument, and so Antoine pulled out a gun and shot the man 3 times. He then fled. Police couldn't find him, and he didn't show up until 2 days later. On January 2nd, Antoine was caught by police for shooting a man outside of a Wilson Food Mart. This guy was just going around and shooting people in the most unlikely places. After his arrest, police learned he had all kinds of prior allegations against him for beating up his own family members. Number 1. Evil Texas Nurse. A Texas nurse has been found guilty of capital murder following the deaths of 4 of his patients. These patients died after being injected with air following life-saving heart surgeries. It took the jury in Smith County an hour to find William George Davis guilty. He'd been working as a nurse at the Christus Trinity Mother Frances Hospital in Tyler throughout 2017 and 2018. During this time, he developed a thirst for killing. As 4 completely random individuals were recovering from their surgeries, the killer nurse snuck up on them and injected them with air. Nobody knew what was happening, believing the victims suffered from unexplainable neurological problems that resulted in death. It wasn't until Dr. William Yarborough, a pulmonologist and professor of internal medicine in the Dallas area, got involved that things started to make sense. He was able to determine that air had been pushed into the arterial system of the patients by looking at brain scans. The evil Texas nurse tried to defend himself by claiming he was the scapegoat for the hospital who messed up the surgeries. But that's not the way the jury saw it. They understood that David was just a sick individual who liked to kill people. He did it in the sneakiest way he had available to him, believing he wouldn't get caught. Plus, no other similar deaths have occurred since Davis left the hospital. Thanks for watching. How do you feel about taking a trip to Texas after hearing all these horror stories? Let us know in the comments, and for more awesome videos, remember to subscribe and check out all the great stuff from the channel. See you again soon. Bye!